Hello, hockey skaters and goalies around the world. Welcome back to another edition of the Ride to the Rink. It's Lee and Mike with you today, and we got a good friend here. Coach Vinny Malts is with us. Coach Vinny has worked with some of your favorite NHL athletes. He works with NHL teams in the mental performance space. And what we want him to talk to you directly about on your ride to the rink today, most likely, is how to deal with the pressure. The pressure of the game, the pressure of the tournament, the pressure in the car, the pressure before the game, after the game, all of the pressure. How do you deal with it? Vinny, I'll hand it over to you. Talk to the kids a little bit about pressure and some of the things they can do to alleviate that pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, first thing that kind of comes up is the pressure is a privilege. I always kind of love that quote of how it is. And I think that's the one thing that any player, or performer should recognize is the very fact that you feel pressure that's unique in and of itself, that you get to participate in a game and you feel this feeling of pressure. The reason why that's so unique is because as you get older from a developmental standpoint, that is going to help you so much in life. And I tell the guys all the time of any player that's listening, as you get older, what you recognize is one weekend of hockey is like 1 year of regular life, right? Especially high pressure hockey. It's incredible how many emotional things go off and you're dealing with, and you're figuring it out, and you're adapting and changing up and recognizing it. So, that's the first part, is recognize that it's not going to be for much longer. Enjoy the process while it lasts, that you're going to feel this thing of pressure in a weekend playing a game, and, enjoy that. Learn to enjoy that. Learn to appreciate it. It may not always feel good, but the recognition is the first step, is that we get to feel pressure. And when you get older, once we all end up in men's league, and when you end up in men's league, it's not the same anymore. you're going to miss what actually happens those days. So that's the first thing. The other part, when you talk about the idea of pressure, of how to handle it. So most players, what they're dealing with is emotional pressure, right? It's what happens is I get this idea in my mind of what's going to happen in the future. What's happening right now. Why am I not in the power play? Why am I not in PK? Why am I not playing in the first line? And so, the first step that I always tell players, or that we work on with them, is to recognize your own narrative and your own story is your own story. So step one is being aware of, oh, I'm having this reaction about this situation of when I'm playing, but is somebody else having the same reaction? Is somebody else on the team? So you might be in the same position, third line, or, fourth or fifth, or, deep pairing, or goalie or backup. And, can you take it in your mind and go, you know what? I'm viewing it this way. Here's how I'm interpreting the information. Does somebody else view it differently? Is that a possibility? So that's the first thing, is that recognizing in your own mind is that you're creating a perspective, but then does somebody else have the same one? Is someone else seeing it the same way? And what we're trying to do there is you're trying to basically create the cracks of it's all a story. It's all a narrative in our heads. And so when I see the idea of pressure, it's induced by your own mindset. It's your own idea. It's your own perspective, whether it's ideas that have been fed to you by your family, by coaches that you have around you, by social media that you've been watching. A lot of it does come from what you're interpreting from outside information. And if you really stop and think about that, well, where did you get that idea from? Why do you think that pressure, that idea came to you? Where did it come from? Is that something that you think about? Or is that something you heard somebody else say? Is that something that somebody else is making you think about? And if you could take yourself to that place and really recognize, is this something that I just hear from elsewhere? And most of you, that are listening, you'll think about it, and you might even be sitting in the car right now looking at your parent, or you might even think about a teammate right now that yeah, you know what? I heard them talking about this team that we're going to play today, and they're all freaked out about how good they are. If you start to really pay attention, you're going to start to recognize that a lot of times it is coming from an outside source. It's not coming from what you're naturally thinking about. So that's one of the first steps that I encourage a lot of the players to make sure, is that you're recognizing that a lot of these ideas of quote unquote what pressure is that coming from what you believe and what you think, or is that coming from an outside source, from culture, from other people around you that are infusing that into you? And then once you kind of recognize that that's going on, now it's your responsibility to recognize, okay, what are the triggers that are happening of when I hear that said, or when I think of that idea, am I able to catch it in that moment? And so one exercise I'll give you guys that that I enjoy, that I think the listeners might be able to institute is, I call it the ego roll exercise. We use this with our players. So mine, as an example, is Angry Alex, right? Angry Alex. So all I do is I ask a player, okay, what's your initial, when you think about your emotion under pressure, what's the thing that gets to you? What's the thing that kind of grabs at you? What's the emotion that you feel initially? And so it might be frustrated or sad or whatever, but we'll use angry, right? So the player might say, I get angry. Okay, great. What's a letter, what's a name that starts with the letter of the emotion? So if it's A, angry, what's a name that starts with letter A that you can think of that just comes to mind? Okay, Alex. Great. So now you think of Angry Alex. That's the emotion that you feel, and that's the name that you just gave it. Well, now give it a color. What color do you see when you think of Angry Alex? Well, red. Great. So now when you think of Angry Alex, red image, what do you see as a image or character? What kind of comes to mind? Oh, like one of those fireball coming out of the hair emoji guy that kind of comes out with all this stuff. Okay, great. So now you have this image of this fireball emoji, red, Angry Alex, awesome. Now what your job is what are the triggers of when Angry Alex comes out? What are the things that are happening? Is it something that's happening in the game? Is it something that's happening when you're in the car with your parents? Is it something that's happening from you saw a teammate get picked up for a select team or whatever it is? What are you noticing creates that image and creates that Angry Alex comes out? And now what your job is to realize that that is just a part of your ego. It's just a part of you. We all have it. Every one of us on this call, right? Or everyone that's here and in the car listening, we all have it. So admit it that you have it, but then as a tool, what's been great is I've had NHL players all the way down to Division I, all the top players, and I only preface that because they laugh when they think about their Angry Alex. When they're in the moment and they catch the trigger, they actually start laughing in those moments. Sometimes, or they'll get in their heads and they'll say, Vinny, man, telling me this stupid exercise. And that'll take them there as well. That'll take them to that place where it's a pattern interrupt. But the idea is that you own that it's a part of you. It's your own perspective, but separate it and realize there's things that are triggering the pressure of the environment that's creating that emotion, and take that and say, oh, that's just me. It's okay. I'm okay with who I am. And now I have an exercise that I'm going to use that's going to allow me to say, well, this is when it happens, right? For me, as examples are with my kids, I know, hey, at the end of the day, when I'm at low capacity and I'm tired, I have to be careful that when the kids are misbehaving with my wife and saying things, that I don't snap on them and Angry Alex comes out because they're upsetting mommy, right? Or
I'm guilty of that sometimes, man.
Yeah, exactly. Or, one of the players, they're not listening about something. And, I know that I've said this to them now multiple times, and I've talked to them about this a dozen times, and they still can't figure it out, right? So I know for myself that these are triggers that can happen, and I'm aware of it. And because I'm aware of those triggers, I'm able to balance it out and recognize and be prepared and ready for Angry Alex to potentially come out.
Right.
And so those are the things that when you think about the idea of pressure, that I hope that you align with, and you understand that these are the realities, right? You have to understand that a lot of it is coming from environmental of ideas that you've gotten, but then how do you interpret those ideas? And then if those ideas are really grabbing at you, here's a tool that you can use to just recognize it's just normal. It's a narrative, it's a story. But what are you doing to recognize that if you can just diffuse that story by recognize you are who you are, you're a human being, you work on that, you can actually develop that muscle and get better at recognizing how to deal with pressure by utilizing that.
Yeah, I think it's also important, Vinny. This is great stuff, that kids listening, your emotions are indicators. And I think that's something else that kids, you got to start to realize, like, it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling, but they're usually like an antenna going up in your mind of, okay, hey, you're feeling something. So another tactic, right, Vinny, is acknowledge you're feeling something and maybe ask the question, hey, what emotion is this? Because I think when you're young kids, you don't always realize you're experiencing an emotion. You're in it, right? And this doesn't just have to do with negative emotions like anger or scared or nervous. It's positive emotions too, excitement, elated, like recognizing what you're feeling. And then I always like to follow that up, Vinny, with what do I control in this situation, right?
Wow.
So acknowledging, okay, I'm nervous.
Mm-hmm.
That's a humongous first step, is just acknowledging that feeling. Then asking the question, What do I control in this situation? So to your point about the parents talking about the big ranked game against the top team in the league and the outcome and the rankings, well, what do you control over that? The answer is usually nothing, not much, just basically your effort, your mindset, and how you prepared for the game. And if you can stay in control of those things, that helps to move some of those emotions or quell those. But you're absolutely right. I call them saboteurs, right?
Yes.
In your mind, right? That you have the negative thoughts. They're super duper normal, kids.
Exactly.
We all have them. Any
Exactly.
adult who tells you that they don't is lying.
100%.
All right.
100%.
We all have them. And then there's also a sage voice too, which is what, Vinny, you're talking about. Of like, all right, let's think about this maybe a little more rationally. You said they laugh at their negative voices, right? Like that's what control over this looks like.
Exactly.
And then I'll also say one more time too, kids, you got to understand this. You can work on this. You'll never really master it to a point that it doesn't happen,
Exactly.
right? You have to continually work on it throughout your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to get grandiose, kids. That's part of the grand journey. You'll find about that later on.
Yep.
All right. But at your young ages, it's about just identifying those feelings, asking those questions, maybe even making that alter ego, the angry Alex. I love that, right? Of you're not going to control me today, right?
Yep.
So those are some of the things. Mike, I took the whole time. Do you have anything that you want to add to this?
No, I think it's just this first step, if you're listening to this, to like a journey of really thinking about how you can control all these variables that you really can't control. So just learn how to. It's such a great tool to leave this like little seminar here and take it with you, and then go research. Go to Coach Vinny's social media sites, see all of the great content that's out there, and then just keep building on that content and building on finding your way, to overcome a lot of this anxiety and fear and pressure, and just turning into a place where, it's not pressure and it's fun. And Vinny, you spoke a little bit about, the privilege of pressure. I love that because so many kids don't get an opportunity to be in situations where it actually might mean something to them, their family, their coaches, their peers. So it's really cool. Embrace that, learn how to deal with it. And again, you're young enough to research it and then build on it and just be, the best person you can be in this environment.
Yeah. Well,
make it your own. Make it your own. Exactly.
We'll end this one on we'll call it step 0, gratitude. be thankful that you get to play the greatest game in the world. We all believe that to be true. All right, kids, that's going to do it for this episode of The Ride to the Rink. No matter where you're at on this journey, just know we believe in you. You should too. Okay, you got to believe in yourselves just as much as we do. Enjoy every second you get to play this game. Have a wonderful time. We'll see you on the next Ride to the Rink. Everybody, skate on.